What's up, everybody? Omar back at it again with Dirtbag Garage. If you haven't checked it out, go to the Dirtbag Garage on Instagram or on YouTube. My own page is dr_omiz. It's OMIZ. Let's continue with this Tundra. Today we're doing some brakes, and I went with the Power Stop kit. These are just a little bit more expensive than what you would find for OEM replacement at like O'Reilly's or AutoZone or something like that. I've used these in my truck in the past, and they've been, really great. So you got a full kit. I have the rears too, but I don't know if I'm gonna be brave enough to put those together today. Yeah, but I got drilled and slotted rotors and some heavy duty brake pads. All right, now that we got the wheel off, I have a bucket here, so when we take off the caliper, I can rest it on something. We're gonna put these brake pads, push them back against the pistons. You can do this a couple different ways. You can use a C-clamp. I like to use a big set of pliers and basically grab the brake pad and use this little piece of metal here and squeeze them together. And that should give us enough tension to release the brake pads. We got to take off this clip. I think our brakes come with a new one. And then this other clip back here, which hooks into the pins that come across to hold the brake pad in place. All right, so we got the brake pads pushed back against the pistons enough to release some tension on this guy. So I got a little flathead and pulled the pins out pulled this retaining clip off the pins. And now we can just grab a set of pliers and pull these pins out. The top one, you might need to put a little pressure on this clip so that you can pull the pin out. So now we got all the retaining clips off and the pins out. I like to continue pushing the brake pads against the pistons. So, this is stationary, so it's a little easier to work with, but you can do it off of the caliper bracket if you want. All right, once you got the brake pads pushed against the pistons all the way, take these brake pads out. And then you're gonna move on to the bolts holding in the brake caliper, which is this bolt here and this bolt here. So 1 and 2, and I believe they're 17ths. All right, just put some PB Blaster on these bolts because sometimes they can be a little seized in there. Really great for rusted bolts. Taking a look at the brake pads that I just took out. These are not in terrible shape, but they're cracked. They look like they have some kind of uneven wear in some sections, which could cause some pulsating. Not to mention that brake fluid was pretty bad. Our new kit comes with pins, retaining clips, some grease, which is awesome, the brake pads for both sides, and a wear indicator, which is pretty cool. Very nice quality. Okay, now that we got our last bolt out here, set that aside. I took the brake line off of the bracket back here. You can see it. I put the bolt back in there just so I don't lose it. And then we're just gonna grab this guy and set it aside for now. And we're gonna work on taking the rotor off. It should just pop straight out. Okay, so we pulled off the rotor. Doesn't look too bad. There isn't any crazy grooves. It looks like there was some residue from the old brake pads. No lip here, so theoretically we could have just reused this rotor and got some new brake pads, but we're gonna switch them out anyway. Here's the cross-drilled and slotted rotors. Normally it wouldn't matter what side you're putting these on, but since the slots are specific orientation, this is says front passenger and driver, so just be conscious of that. All right, now that you got your rotor bound there, just try to push it against the hub as flush as you can. Slide your caliper back on there, and then work these bolts in by hand first on the bottom and the top to make sure that they line up properly so you don't strip them, and then get them torqued down. Okay, got our hose bracket back on. The caliper bolts are torqued down to 90 foot-pounds. Now we're ready to put our brake pads in. Here is our new brake pads. I'm gonna put the wear indicator on the inside, and then the other pad on the outside. Got 2 pins. This one actually uses aftermarket retaining clip. It's a little easier to get on. This one goes on top, and then this is caliper grease that we're gonna put on the back plate so that there's no noise. So you don't need a ton, just where the pistons are gonna touch the caliper. And then we're gonna take this guy and slide it right in. So got back from AutoZone because we ran into a bit of an issue. I guess there's 2 different sizes for these. There is a 4.7 and a 5 something. I guess there's different calipers for tote packages or the later double cabs. So just be conscious of getting the right size for your calipers. All right, it's the same concept. These are ceramic rotors I picked up at, pads at AutoZone. Just grease them up on the contact points. They have a little wear indicator too, and then just slide these guys in. All right, once you got your pads in, you can just push in the pins. This retaining clip goes like this, and you squeeze it together to bring the ears in, like that. And then you should be able to throw this across. Kind of hard to do this with one hand, but bring this all the way across. All right, I'm reusing the hardware because I might have to exchange those other pads, and I don't want to give them, get any flack for returning them with the new hardware used. But after you're done putting these pins in, these slide into the pins on both sides, and then you just hook this guy right here in the middle of the caliper, and you're good to go. And your finished product should look like this. Essentially, you're doing the same steps on the other side. And then once that side's done, then we can move on to brake bleeding if I don't do the rear today. All right, part 2 of the brake swap on a 2000 to 2006 Toyota Tundra. Did the fronts already. This is part 2 of the video. Got brave and I decided to continue on with the rear brakes. So these are drum brakes, and we're just gonna start by taking off the wheel, obviously, and then pulling this cap off the drum. So I got lucky. My drum actually came off pretty easy. These are the shoes on all the hardware. I'm gonna have a fun time with all that right now. If this doesn't come off very easily, the other way to do that is to kind of spray some penetrating fluid on the studs, try to get it off. These are also threaded right here, these little holes, and you should be able to screw in one of the bolts that can screw into this and push the plate out so you can pull it off. All right, taking a look at our drum kit. We got our brake shoes here. Nice. And then we have a brand new drum. Now we need to pull this out and make sure it's identical to our old drum, because we don't want the same issue we had with the front brakes, which was that they were too big, but the rear should be the same. All right, I gave everything here cleaning with the brake cleaner. Sprayed the crap out of it and just put a rag underneath it to catch all the dirt and debris coming down. Once you do that, try to cover your face or be in a ventilated area when you do that, because all that dust is toxic, and it's going to be going everywhere. So once you spray it down, at least let the dust settle, come back, and then work on your disassembling all this. So here we're going to start with taking our adjuster screw. We're going to pull back on this little part right here and go that way, which is lefty loosey. Okay, once we got it backed off, we let some tension off the shoes. We're going to get these little springs off. So you have to push down and twist them. You see that slot that's like vertical? You try to get that pin through that slot so you can remove the spring. And the way you do that is I'm going to use some pliers and push down and then twist it and then pull out. So that didn't quite work out like I wanted it to, but I got creative. I got some pliers and just pushed down, and I used another pair of pliers, something Like a needle nose plier would work, but this is a wire cutter or splitter. And I turned the pin as I pushed down on that, and it was able to release this. So yeah, once you got the spring off, then you just turn the pin so you can get the cap off, and then you pull the pin out from behind. Save the hardware because we're gonna reuse it. All right, next we have a little horseshoe clip right here that we're gonna knock out using a flathead and a hammer. Just knock it. All right, so from here you release the emergency brake cable, and this guy, we should just be able to put tension back against the spring. There we go. And get this guy released. All right. Okay, again, I don't have any special tools with me, so I have to get creative. It's gonna be kind of hard to show you, but I put basically a screwdriver down here underneath the hook and pushed against the adjuster screw to pull out, and then I use a pair of pliers to pull away from the spring so that I can release the shoe on the other end. So essentially what I was trying to show you was that I had the screwdriver underneath, a flathead screwdriver underneath the hook here. And once I got it underneath the hook here and prying this way, then I grabbed the pliers and pulled towards this way to unhook the spring. Once that spring was out, then the rest of the shoes would just come out. Make sure you gather all the hardware from the shoes because we're going to be reusing it. Took a little finesse, but on one of the shoes there's another horseshoe clip like this. I just got either side flipped up and I started hammering it, and then I was able to get a flathead right in between it and then knock it out that way, and then I pulled the rest of it out of the way with the pliers. All right, well, now we got it all apart. I did another spray down and wipe down just so that we're working with some cleaner parts. I'm gonna clean out the threads on this adjuster screw and use some silicone spray so that it stays a little lubricated in there. And then just double check your shoes to make sure there's no other hardware that is remaining on them before we transfer everything over to the new one. Okay, we got our shoes matched up. Just wanted to make sure that they are in the correct orientation, because you do have two pairs. Just make sure that you have the right ones paired up with the ones you're working with. Once you got this pretty much assembled, then you're just gonna slide this over the hub, and we're gonna need to put our retaining springs back in. All right, so I hooked in the top portion of the shoes into the piston there, and then it's kind of being held together with the outer edges of the drum. So now we're gonna put in our retaining springs. All right, getting this stupid little retaining clip is way harder than it sounds. So what I ended up doing was getting creative again. I used a socket to push the spring down, and then from the back I twisted the pin so that it could stay in place. So we're gonna do the same thing with the other side. Okay, got everything back in. These little springs, man, I don't want to wish it on my worst enemy. They were really hard to get on. But now that this is good to go, we're gonna take our screwdriver and basically push this out, just so that it's snug when we put the drum back on. If not, we're just gonna go back one or two, and then just enough so that the drum can go over. So normally you want to spray these down, but these actually came pretty clean and dry, so we're gonna throw this on and test fit it, see if we're good. Okay, you want to keep adjusting it until these shoes are slightly dragging against the drum. There's also, if you can see, there's a little window back there, and basically that allows you to put the drum on and then keep adjusting it just so that you can see that it's barely dragging. If it's barely dragging, then you should be good. All right, brake bleed procedure. Basically, I'm by myself, so this is a one-man bleed kit. You can get this at like AutoZone or O'Reilly's for like 10 bucks. It's pretty cool. Has a little magnet, sticks on whatever's metal. You just gotta have a hose that is long enough and one that can fit over the brake nipple. Right now we're under the passenger rear. Usually when you do brake bleeds, you're gonna do it furthest tire from the master cylinder. So here's the passenger rear, then we're gonna do driver rear, and then passenger front, and then driver front. All right, you get in the driver's seat, you give it like 20 pumps, and then open up the bleed screw down there, and watch all the bubbles come into this bottle. Then I'm gonna jump in the driver's seat again right now and give it a couple pumps, and then come back and check to make sure there's no bubbles in this line. If there's no bubble in the line, then we're good to move on to the next one. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna make sure that the fluid keeps cycling till it's clean, and then we're gonna repeat the process for each one. Make sure you keep filling up the reservoir up front to make sure that there's enough fluid, or else if you introduce air into the system, you're gonna have to redo this again.